Hi, everybody. Melissa Chambliss here with Together We Will, Cincinnati, Southwest Ohio. Sorry for the little bit of a delay. We had a couple of technical issues, but I think we're good to go. With me today, I have Mariann Penska, who is a Westchester trustee candidate. So we're going to just chat for just a little bit, and then we'll get started. We're waiting for some other groups today. Joining us, we're going to have Together We Will East Cincinnati, United We Stand, and then Indivisible Cincinnati for All. If you get a chance, please like our Facebook page. It's our public page. If you like that or follow that, then you'll get notifications of any of our upcoming events. You can also go and check out past events. We've interviewed just a ton of candidates, not only just in Cincinnati, but in Westchester and the surrounding area for school board, for city council, and now trustee, and judges, to name just a few. Also, you can follow us on Twitter at TWWSWOH. We do have an active Twitter account, and we also post a lot of this information on our Twitter account regarding our Facebook Live events, so it's pretty exciting, along with some other posts that are also pretty fun to follow. And then to ask a question on this Q&A, just so you guys know, comment on the live feed with your questions. Make sure that you click on the video itself, comment, post that, and then magically in the back, someone will feed it here to me on the laptop. And I'll make sure that we take time and pause for any of your live questions. Just as a reminder, Election Day for Westchester also, but for Cincinnati, I think for all of the surrounding areas, is November 7th. And the last day to register is tomorrow. So if you're not registered, I know that you can do it online, you can go in person. Please make sure that you register because your vote counts. Everybody's vote counts, and we need them more than ever these days. So I'm going to just do a quick check-in and see if we're good, and we'll get started. All right, we're all good. So, thanks for joining, Mariann. I really appreciate it. I'm excited to have you here.
Well, it's my pleasure, and thank you to you, Melissa, and to Together We Will for having me.
Yeah, so we'll go ahead and get started. I'll do just a quick intro, and then I'll highlight just a couple of things. But if I miss anything, feel free to let me know. And I think we'll share on the page, too, that your Facebook page is Penska for Westchester.
Correct.
Right? Mm-hmm. So they can find out information there on your Facebook page regarding your candidacy. So you were born in a small coal mining town in western Pennsylvania.
I know it sounds like a country song, but
it does.
It's really true.
But I think you have to be like in Tennessee or West Virginia or something like that for it to qualify as a country song. Just being from the South, that's what I heard anyway. And so you're daughter of first-generation Americans.
That's correct.
So where were they from?
My grandparents from the Ukraine and Poland, and my parents are first generation here. So they are. So nice. It's exciting. Yeah.
And they moved. They moved to Pennsylvania, or have they?
They had settled in Pennsylvania, and I was actually born in Pennsylvania, and then moved here several years later. Okay,
nice. So now you dropped out of high school in 11th grade to get married.
Yeah.
Wow, that's young.
It was.
Yeah, and moved to New York City. And it's such an interesting, dropping out of high school in the 11th grade and then to watch your education journey from there. It seems like it's never stopped. I mean, I think earlier you were telling me you decided to go back and get another degree because you just wanted something to do. So I find that fascinating that you made the decision to drop out, but then education has always been a passion of yours because I think a few years later you got your GED and started working on your bachelor's. And then while you were raising 2 children, you went back to pursue an MBA and a joint law degree.
Yep. Together.
So, like 2 kids wasn't enough.
Yep, right. Being a single mom, 2 kids, and working was not enough.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you're definitely one determined woman. So, you practiced personal injury law and assisted victims for a while. Sorry, I'm using paper because my eyes are like glazed over and the computer's too far. So, and then in 1995, you began working at LexisNexis in Miamisburg?
That's correct.
Okay. As a legal research representative. And you've been with them for 22 years.
Yes, I have.
Wow. That's quite a while. And then you've just started your own company in 2009. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, my company is ProPower Corporate Training and Development. as I was working at LexisNexis, it took me about 3 years working there before I went into management. And training and leadership development and teamwork of teams was always really important to me. And I saw at a global corporation how important that was. And not only when your team is local, but especially when your teams are virtual and you're going between the UK, Australia, Canada, US, etc. So I really got into it. I joined the Association of Talent and Development and became a member there for several years. And for a while at LexisNexis, I was a manager of training and knowledge management, so that kind of played into it. So I just started doing it on the side as a consultant and love doing it.
Yeah. Well, great. So now on the outside of work and raising a family and all the degrees, you've worked for breast cancer awareness, marriage equality, and you've traveled to Romania to build houses.
I did. One of the things that I think it's really important is that, especially in this day and age when the internet makes everything so much closer, and that you realize that you're not just a citizen of a town or township or state or the United States, you really are a global citizen, and your responsibilities can be really far-reaching. So one of the things everybody worries about what's my purpose in life, and one of my purposes in life is absolutely to serve as an example to my children and grandchildren. So to have my children know, or my grandchildren know, that I've gone to Romania to build houses for the Roma people, to help that situation out there, and do a lot of the other charity work, I think is really important that they learn to reach out. An interesting fact about the Roma people is because they're nomadic, they don't often have an address. And if you don't have an address, you can't take advantage of schooling or any state programs. So by helping building them homes, you're actually also getting them into public assistance and schooling for their children so that you're not perpetuating that poverty over and over again. So not only are you giving them a home, but you're giving them a future.
Right.
So,
wow.
It was awesome.
I guess I knew that, but I didn't put the two and two together,
Yeah.
and why the house building was so important. So that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, it was one of the best things I think I've ever done in my life, because it was kind of scary traveling to Romania by myself.
Yeah, I can
to
imagine.
do that, but it was a great adventure.
Yeah, and traveling and then picking up hammers and saws and things like that.
I can
be afraid I'd hurt myself, but
I can insulate and stucco the outside of a building with the best of them.
Yeah. So. Hey, I've got some side jobs if you're interested. I've got an old house, so. And then you served for several years as the vice president of AIDS Volunteers of Northern Kentucky. So.
Yep, I did. A couple decades ago, one of my best friends was impacted by the HIV/AIDS epidemic. I started to join support groups so that I could be of better help to him and know how to support him, going through all of that. And through that organization, AIDS Volunteers of Northern Kentucky, who actually sponsored the support groups, I started to get more and more involved, and then became the vice president and worked for several years in terms of helping to organize healing weekends and participating in healing weekends. And it was one of the very first groups that not only held those type of weekends of support, not only for people infected by HIV and AIDS, but also people affected by that. So nurses, support people, parents, spouses. So it really took a more holistic view of treatment than just the person infected. So.
Yeah. Wow, you've definitely got some interesting history and interesting participation in a lot of things. I got a feeling there's not much you wouldn't tackle.
I think I'm tenacious, so.
Yeah, it sounds like it. So we'll go ahead and get started with some of the questions that we've compiled from the group and that type of thing. But of course, as always, guys out there watching, feel free to ask any questions and they'll come forward. Happy to stop and take a break. I think the live interaction is really key, so don't hesitate. So now we already discussed the fact that the elections are November 7th. So I'm just going to ask you some general questions. Let me scroll down here and make sure I have this. So how many seats are open and how many people are running?
Well, I think this is really important, especially for the people in Westchester Township, because unlike any other election, actually all 3 trustee positions are up for election. There are 2 incumbents who are in the normal rotation, And for that position, for those roles, there are 2 positions open and there are 4 candidates running. However, we just had another trustee position vacated by George Lang moving to Congress, and there is a special election for that seat that is vacated, and that's for the remainder of his term. And there are actually 8 candidates out there for that one position. So one of the things for Westchester Township voters is that whenever they see all the campaign signs and literature and everything, it makes them feel like there are 12 candidates for 3 positions, and it's going to be hard for them to discern which candidates are for what position, to make sure that they are highly educated before they walk into that voting booth starting on Wednesday. So that's one of the things I really...
So we have, I'm just going to make sure, because I'm like puzzled in my head here.
No kidding.
So I know. So we have 2 positions that are open, and
for
those
the 4-year term.
For the 4-year term.
Yep.
So 2 positions are open for the 4-year term, and we have 4 candidates running for that.
That's correct. 2
and
incumbents.
Is that the race you're running in?
It is. That's the race that I'm running in.
Okay.
So there are 2 incumbents, and then there are 2 new candidates.
2 new candidates.
For that 2 positions. So you have 4 candidates for those 2 positions, and the top 2 vote getters get the positions.
Get the positions. And then you have 1 position that has 8 candidates, but that's for a shorter term because
Correct.
it's the remainder of George's term.
Yep, exactly
Okay.
right.
Just wanted to make sure I was following the math here.
No,
I
think it's important to make that distinction, so I don't think you can spend enough time on that to make sure people understand.
But you're running for the 2 seats for the full term.
That's correct.
Yes, or one of the 2 at least.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't think you can win both. But so what prompted you to run for trustee?
You know, for a long, long time, I mean, I've been politically active since the 60s, and always kind of an advocate for, you know, as you said, marriage equality and HIV and AIDS and women's rights. And I've really kind of seen the evolution of, you start back in the 50s when you see civil rights, then you go into women's rights, then you go into progressively more and more people making us aware of where there are some social injustices. And I think over the last, I'm going to even say 10 years, I've seen a change in the political climate, in the landscape for sure, that almost made it sound that it was much more Democrat against Republican, Independent against Green Party or whatever, that it became a little bit more adversarial. The thing that I love about the Westchester Township trustee position is that it's nonpartisan. And the people of Westchester actually have an incredible opportunity to look at those candidates that are out there and really pick people that they feel will be an effective team to move forward on Westchester, regardless of political affiliation. So that kind of obstructionist kind of view. I can remember hearing somebody very politically savvy say, my job is to prevent somebody else from succeeding. And you sit there and go, even if it's the best thing for your constituents, would you stop it? And you sit there and say, somewhere along the line, we have really forgotten about the people who elect us. And running for local office is a perfect position to prevent that kind of mentality and attitude from seeping in. So, so that's what excites me. I'm looking for something that's much more public service than political, and local politics is it for me.
Yeah. Well, good. So now tell me, because I'm not familiar with Westchester. I don't live in Westchester, but what exactly are like the roles and responsibilities? What's your duties as a trustee? Yeah,
and for those of you who are not familiar with a trustee over a city council, it's very similar to a city council. The trustees in the state of Ohio are regulated by an Ohio Revised Code section that kind of describe what our duties and our responsibilities are. And essentially we provide police, fire, some infrastructure, safety, those kinds of issues, some zoning that we get to weigh in on and help mold for the township. As always, I mean, for me, safety, education, and commerce are really the 3 key things for kind of growing the community. And you mentioned, I had an MBA as well as the law degree. And I think that balance of just making sure that you're keeping an eye on everything and putting the needs of those in balance and understanding the root causes that impact when they are being affected, I think are really important. So I think it's good to have a business sense when you're approaching those kind of things.
Okay. So we're going to go kind of move into some of the other questions. I'm going to move this forward.
Sure.
So how will you ensure you meet the needs of all constituents without solely catering to your party? And I think you kind of addressed that a little bit by saying, bipartisan, there's not a party affiliation, but maybe you want to expand on that just a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And the odd thing about it is, even though it's a nonpartisan race, there is cronyism that exists, right? There's a lot of political money poured into a Westchester Township trustee race, unbelievable amount of money for a trustee race. There has been cronyism in the past. So I think my goal is, again, to listen to everybody. And, I'll be real honest, I have never, as an attorney or as a business person, felt I had too much information to make a decision. And to get that, you have to be willing to listen to everybody. So you listen to Democrats and progressives and independents and Republicans and Tea Party members. You have to listen to everybody, because certainly as a business person, I understand a good idea comes from anywhere. And I'm not excluding any good idea that would help move Westchester forward and provide its citizens what they truly need. And I think that's exciting too. I think it's exciting to hear people's ideas and why they think the way they do. So so for me, I think that's real important.
Okay, great, thank you. 1 second. Okay. Oh, wow. There you go. So apparently my phone started to die very quickly. So I apologize. They needed to quickly move the mics around. Who knew? I think it's time for me to upgrade my iPhone. So anyway, so apologize for that. We did a quick little timeout. So we talked about meeting the needs of all your constituents, and then how prominent, because you talked about listening to everyone, regardless of party, regardless of affiliation, how prominent is the current political divide in Westchester right now?
If you attend or watch the Westchester Township meetings, which are videoed, which is a great opportunity for people to kind of keep up with what the trustees are doing, even if they can't get out on a Tuesday night to a meeting or whatever. You can watch it anytime, and I think that's a great thing to be accessible to all of the residents in Westchester. I think the divide is pretty significant right now. I think we need to do more in terms of maybe even community forums to get out there and listen to groups of constituents and have that open dialogue back and forth. And the format of our trustee meetings there are citizen comments, there are trustee comments, and there's no real dialogue. The trustees would say now, well, if anybody wants to get a hold of me, all they have to do is call. But I think that puts the onus on the citizen as opposed to the responsibility on the trustee. So I think the trustees need to make a better effort to hold, community forums. And, for instance, the opioid epidemic is something that really is impacting Butler County and Westchester now. Helping people get educated and have that information so that if we need to move forward in Westchester in terms of, let's just say, police and fire and EMT support, they understand what's motivating that and what the core reason and a root cause is behind that. And I think having those open dialogues and helping to educate people and listening to their ideas again. Again, I've never felt I've ever had too much information.
Yeah. Okay. And so you talked about holding different forums, right, for education and for also just for, people in the county or in Westchester to be able to contact their trustees. So along those lines, how would you like for, citizens to hold you accountable? How would you like for them to communicate with you and reach out to you?
I'll tell you, that's, I think, really important as well. As we, and I'm sure the other political candidates can tell you that even going door to door canvassing, people are very open about how they feel about everything. I know I was doing some phone banking, and if I did not reach the individual, I would leave them a message and say, hey, if you need anything, give me a call back. And I left them my phone number. And I was amazed at how many people call back and ask me questions that may not even deal with my race. Maybe they deal with the opioid epidemic, or maybe issue 2 is a big one for the state. So they call and ask me, can you explain this to me? And so I have found a phenomenal willingness for the citizens of Westchester to engage anybody who's willing to listen to them. So I think in order to reach out to the constituents, you need a varied methods, right? You need to be available on Facebook. You need to be available by phone. You need to be available in community forums so that it would fit into anyone's life. I mean, Westchester is just a phenomenal community to raise families in, but I've been a single mom, and I know what that's like to try and juggle, especially during the school year. Right. To try and juggle your kids and soccer and cross country and band or whatever else, your scouts, everything that your kids are in, trying to juggle that and then still find time for you to be informed with the issues and everything. So I think you have to make yourself available at a variety of channels so that anybody has that opportunity to reach out and that you're reaching out to them.
Right. Right. So just making yourself accessible to all different types of styles and stuff like that.
Yep, absolutely.
And it's kind of like in the business world, they say, you can't just communicate things with one way, one communication method, right? You have to use a multitude in order to get your point across.
Yeah, and it's really funny, too, because then you help you evolve with the way your constituents evolve. And I'll give you a practical example. I'm a global process solutions manager. And one of the things that I'm doing is developing a tool that improves the customer experience of our global customers. And one of the things that we have realized is that it really helps if they have channel of choice. So they can either call in and talk to somebody on the phone, they can use email, they can chat in.
Yep.
And you have to give everybody those channels so that they can feel comfortable with what they're with what they're doing. And that increases the the experience for them, and then they'll take available of it. And I think we need to do that in government too.
Right. So I'm sure, I want to move on now to kind of what your platform is, what you plan to do to move Westchester forward, and kind of, what you're running on.
Again, I don't want to be repetitious, but I think one of the things we need to do is we really need to build a team of trustees who will work together, who are committed. I mean, right now we have 3 Republicans. Before George resigned, we had 3 Republicans, and I have seen some pretty divisive meetings that I can't even get people in the same political party to even be civil to each other. So I think now's a great opportunity for the citizens of Westchester to really look at the candidates that are running, see who are committed to Westchester and the citizens as opposed to a political party.
Right.
And then pick the people they think would work well together as a team. This is a different opportunity than they have ever had before. And I don't want anybody to waste that opportunity. So for me, having done a lot of team building and a lot of leadership training, I think I am qualified with both the business as well as the legal background that I have to not only be able to work as a team with whoever is elected in the other 2 trustee positions, but also I think I'm uniquely qualified to kind of put a different perspective on any challenges Westchester has in the future. Nobody in any community knows what's out there. You can do a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan. You can have all this, but you never really know what's going to impact your community. And I would prefer to be a little bit more proactive as opposed to reactive, and I think I can help prepare that group to be more proactive.
Well, and I think just the step forward of, having people that can kind of come to some type of an agreement to move forward. I think it would be very difficult to make decisions about the future of Westchester if you can't even sit across from one another at a table and discuss it.
And I've always felt that people essentially want the same thing, right? They want their children to be happy and healthy. They want to be able to pay their bills. They want to be able to maybe put some money in the bank. They want to think about retiring someday. So people generally want the same thing. I think the big divide between Republicans or Democrats or independents is how we go down that road, right? How am I going to get there? And I think that's the biggest path. But I think essentially people really do want the same thing.
Mm-hmm. So we have a question here that came in live. And it's actually in reference to, you talked about trustees being accessible via various media outlets. And would you recommend the adoption of a social media policy for trustees to ensure civil and productive discussion?
That's a really, really good question, especially in light of some of the activity that we have had here. One of the things as an attorney is you have to take an ethics exam. And you have to go to ethics class for a semester. And one of the things that I think would be helpful is not only anytime the Westchester Township trustees are on social media, I think they represent the community. I think they should be held to a higher standard. I think their opinions are their opinions. And again, I am not beyond diverse opinions. If a diverse opinion is well-founded, based in fact, has some really good weight behind it, I'm all for diverse ideas. But whenever you get to name-calling, whenever you get to bullying, I absolutely think there would be a social policy. I work for a corporation.
Right.
That says if I say anything on social media that is demeaning to my company and that can hurt my company, I can be held responsible for that. Why should somebody the people actually elect be held to a lesser standard? I would absolutely hold them to a higher standard.
Yeah, and we've seen that a lot. And I know in Together We Will, we have a lot of members, and not just in our group, but Together We Will East Cincinnati. We've had a lot of chatter about people being blocked. Right?
Yep.
So that, we have politicians who have Facebook pages, who have Twitter accounts, and they're blocking their constituents because they are not agreeing with them. Mm-hmm. And so what would would that be a part of what your recommendation is from a social media standpoint?
I probably would only block somebody that I feel was being hateful, disrespectful.
Right.
Somebody with an opposing opinion. I'm not afraid of that at all.
Right.
It's really funny. My best friend, who was graduating from law school when I was going into law school and getting my MBA, she and I were having coffee one time, and I said, "Tell me, now that you've been through law school, I'll bet you think you can have all the answers, because through law school you have weighed both sides of every important issue." And she looked at me and she said, "Actually, it's hard to make a decision because there's more data out there. There's more information out there." And I went, "Oh man, this is not going to help me.
This is not helping.
This is not helping at all." But she's absolutely right. So there is absolutely nothing to fear in diverse ideas. I think that opens a dialogue, and you can't come to a consensus by bullying somebody or shutting somebody down or telling somebody to shut up. That is just counterproductive to anything. Westchester, one of the things I think we've had a problem with in Westchester is some of the trustees have felt that they represent their constituents who voted for them, as opposed to everyone in Westchester. And I learned this during the 2008 election, that your party's president then becomes the country's president. And we've just learned that, in last year.
Right.
Trump is not just a Republican president. He is all of our president. And he owes us that responsibility to represent all of us and to care and watch over all of us, not just the people that voted for him. Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah. I think, I think the regulations from a rule standpoint or a policy standpoint in politics has not kept up with the advancement of social media.
Yep.
And so there's a lot of gray area there. But I think if you're going to use it for political purposes, then your constituents should have access to you, barring being ugly and nasty.
Right.
And,
oh, absolutely.
Those kind of things,
I understand. I'm totally fully aware of the kind of issues, because you're right, we haven't kept up with social media as fast as it has grown. I absolutely understand some of those issues. I mean, freedom of speech being one, you know, and somebody putting something on one of my pages is absolutely open to put something on one of my pages. But again, if it comes to being disrespectful, if it comes to bullying, if it comes to hate,
all of that. Absolutely.
I absolutely see a use of that. Because then what that's actually doing is putting a chilling effect on other people from engaging in a dialogue. And nothing should put a chilling effect on people engaging. So.
Right. So we've talked a little bit about moving Westchester forward and, you know, getting a group that can work together and collaborate together to move. So beyond that, what are your main goals as a Westchester trustee? You know,
it's really, you know, I say to serve, and it really truly is that. I will admit Westchester is a great, great community. We have great schools. Our economy is wonderful. We have low unemployment. But I think there are things that currently threaten that. And part of it is the partisan politics that we see, and we're not representing everyone. So I think for me, it would be to focus on those areas, keep them growing. One of the things that I would really love is that whenever somebody thinks about Westchester, they think of the word thriving. We've done a lot of work in terms of building Westchester economically. And now we're going to get into this tipping point where your economic growth is maybe out of stride with the other growth in the community, either be it infrastructure or meeting the needs of the community or providing the community with some amenities so that they can take advantage and have a better quality of life. And that's one of the things that I want to be aware of. I can work very well reacting to a situation, but I really think being proactive is the key here. I'm going to give you an example. A year ago, Ohio passed the medical marijuana law. To me, if the Ohio legislature passes a law, the very first thing you should do is, how might this impact my community? And do some research about it and kind of look into it and see what might be an issue 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, 2 years down the road. Our trustees didn't do anything until in the spring, actually early summer, somebody came and wanted to put a cultivation facility into Westchester. And at that time, the trustees put a 6-month moratorium on a decision so that they could research it, and then they extended it to an 8-month moratorium. To me, that's reactive.
Right.
They should have said, this could potentially impact my community. Hold community forums to get the community's ideas about what they want and what they don't want. And for people who don't want that, find out why. You know, find out why, and can you mitigate the negative of that and make them feel more comfortable about that. You know, our trustees are all about economic growth and creating jobs, but apparently it's pick and choose on economic growth and where you're going to create those jobs.
Right.
Not saying that's a bad thing, but I think there should be more justifiable reasons behind it than just a knee-jerk reaction to something.
And you might want to check out what your citizens would like. Just as a thought.
Just saying.
Yeah. So, well, I was going to ask you how you would achieve some of those goals, but I think you just walked us through an example right there.
That's a really recent example.
Yeah, well, it's very recent, and it's also very pertinent. And I guess when you think about it, when you think about the laws that are passed in Ohio, the laws that are passed in this area, how is that going to affect, issue 2? You know, how would that potentially affect the community? And those are the types of things that you have to proactively get in front of.
Absolutely right. And the other thing too is, you know, one thing that we don't talk about a lot is, you know, making sure that you're collaborating with local communities, the county, other townships that are surrounding you, because there might be an opportunity to partner. You know, the opioid epidemic in Butler County is in Butler and Montgomery County are
Yeah.
horrific right now, right? There's no magic bullet in that.
Yeah.
It's not just the sheriff's carrying Narcan. It's nothing. It is absolutely education, support, treatment. I mean, it goes down the
Heard
line.
medical marijuana actually helps.
It does.
This is another side.
It does. Well, and it's really funny because I believe a comment at the trustee meeting was that it doesn't have any social or economic benefits. And I sat there wondering, then why did we pass that? I'm thinking the state of Ohio
Yeah.
has seen some benefit
I'm
behind
sure.
it. But that's off on a tangent. But again, partnering and collaborating with those other groups, I think is analogous to what I have done in my global groups. They work differently, they have different interests, but at some point you can all come together because the opioid epidemic is going to have to be handled not only at the local level, county level, state level, federal level. And there's going to have to be a really comprehensive plan to put in place to
Right.
address that. So one of the things you want to look at is how have other areas in the country successfully handled those programs? Would those programs work here? What would it take to have those programs? I mean, you really have to kind of get into the
Right.
Into the details on that stuff. So
Yeah. All right. So we're going to move into. So we've talked. I think you've actually answered some of this, but I'll ask it again just to make sure you haven't missed any opportunity because you've talked about the major challenges or problems, but we didn't ask specifically. So I didn't know if there was anything you wanted to add, or do you feel like you've pretty much covered those? I'm not trying to force you to be redundant.
No. I think again, keeping an eye on that balance between economic gain and growth and what the community needs in general, because growth in one area can cause problems in another area and vice versa, right? We want to make sure that the families in Westchester are taken care of, have what they want, meet their basic needs of having well-educated children, great economic growth, low unemployment, and having some of the amenities that you would have in a community like Westchester.
Okay. Well, I think we're going to have probably like about 10 minutes left. Are you still good on time?
Oh, sure.
We started just a smidge late,
Oh,
so
I'm fine.
I just thought because we still have a few questions here, and I just want to make sure that we kind of get through these because they were obviously asked for a reason.
Oh, sure.
So I'm going to kind of list out some things, and I'm going to ask for your assessment of
Is this like
Westchester.
a speed round?
Yes, this is speed round. It's not speed dating, although I do find you fascinating. So this is the speed round of how would you assess Westchester in terms of, and we'll just kind of highlight some areas.
Okay.
So in one area is public health, and so this could include teen pregnancies, STDs, illegal drug abuse, the opioid
epidemic, yeah. I think we, in terms of the health of the community, I think we are on a cusp here of seeing it impact us a little more heavily. If you have it, if it's a big issue in another county or another township or another city, it starts to spread out, right, if it's not controlled in those areas. And I think, again, and I keep hating to say the proactiveness of it, but you have to be able to study what's